Welcome, Barella, to the second ever episode of Ideation Station, where the podcast, hosted by moi, where we discuss cool ideas, possibilities available to us in the future, where we discuss digital art making, and what it means to be an engaged and active human online and off. So it's a pleasure to have you, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary beings. Barella is a wonderful member of our Blender community who makes pretty amazing generators, which you can find on his Gumroad and which we'll discuss more in this podcast. He is proactive, always making stuff, always experimenting, the best of what the Blender community is. So it's a real pleasure to welcome him on today. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
It's wonderful to have you. I first want to start off by asking you how you describe yourself as an artist, and if you even describe yourself as an artist.
Starting easy. I will say that I don't usually consider myself as an artist in the short term, because I try to consider myself more as a, I wouldn't even say tech artist because that's already too advanced, something in between. So my first goal is always the creative part, but I'm extremely interested, and what I try to develop more is how to get there, not just the sake of getting there, but how, by what means. And this is what I'm and this is also the main reason I got into proceduralism in 3D art, because to be able to touch things on a almost scripting level, but without knowing scripting, it's something that I really appreciate, really like. And that used to be the same. Also, that is the same when I do traditional art and paintings and drawings and inking. I'm always very interested in the medium, in choosing the specific surface, the specific pen.
Mm-hmm.
So I do art. I hope to do art for a living for possibly the rest of my life. And my way of interacting with art is very tries to be very technical.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say mostly because I'm very happy doing it in that way.
Yeah, that's super cool. I don't know if I'm like that necessarily as an artist, but I want to be. Um, and I think focusing more on the process rather than the end result is really what makes an artist an artist. And allowing yourself as an artist to be passionately involved in the process um, is is more fulfilling in the long run than being fixated on the end result.
I do agree.
So I really dig that. Can you give the listeners a little bit of background on how you found Blender, what your history is like as a traditional artist?
I do believe it's a nice story. And so I was always interested in art. My family, from my mother's side, always had an interest in art, so I was educated to look at things in a certain way, to appreciate something that was man-made but was art. That when you're a kid, it's always a kind of a difficult concept to teach you what is art and what is just craft. Something that I still don't always understand myself. And so I always drawn. I always drew it. I always painted. And when I got to high school, I chose art high school. Here in Italy, there are specific high schools dedicated to art. And in the first year, I was, I remember, for I don't remember why, but for some reason I was trying out SketchUp, Google, the 3D program. I was making little things, And a guy who later became probably my closest friend ever, that I still know 14 years later, randomly told me, "Do you ever tried Blender? Do you ever heard what Blender is?" And I was like, "I have no idea. Let's find out." And that started it.
Mm-hmm.
I randomly downloaded Blender one day out of curiosity, and I don't remember what version was, but I do remember that cycles didn't exist yet. And just to give you a time window, I remember cycles, the alpha branch for testing out cycles came out later that year, but for the first like 6 months, cycles didn't exist,
Wow.
and that was the beginning. And it was almost no, without almost, it was 13 years ago.
Wow. S
Yeah, and since then it was love at first sight.
yeah.
I started using it daily. I had an extremely slow learning curve because I was very lazy. I'm still very lazy. So instead of like a lot of people do grinding 10,000 tutorials every month, I was just like, let's try to do that and redo it 10 times so that like you get muscle memory of how to make things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a fair trade because looking back, I have barely no renders of those years, but I know like mm, every single button of Blender now. I know where everything is.
Wow.
So I think it's a fair trade.
Wow. So would you ever try B for artists? I have to ask.
Dre's asked me a lot of times to try it. I never did it. I will, because I promised I will. I am scared because I'm scared to experience again what everyone experienced switching from Blender 2.79 and 2.8
Mm-hmm.
with the change of interface.
So, just for our listeners, Drace is a fellow Blender artist, and he's created what's it called? Like a split, like a
Now he's one of the he's helping developing different branch of Blender that is more focused for artists. It's called B for artists for that reason,
mm-hmm.
and it's heavily focused on creating a super intuitive UI interface with
Yeah,
icons, specific icons for everything. And I think it's really interesting. I never tried yet, but I will.
yeah. I think it's really interesting too, and really awesome that he's put so much energy and effort into it. Um, and I imagine it's a very rewarding experience to think so deeply about how to recreate the UI of a software you love and make it better.
Yeah,
That's that means you're paying attention to like the process, like moving the mouse from here to here. Is this too long? Is this intuitive? What does intuitive even mean? That's
yeah.
really cool.
On this specific point, like for example, I do remember probably it was 8 years ago, something like that. Andrew Price, aka Blender Guru,
Yeah.
the one and only, and
Showed up?
made a proposition for a complete interface change that was very interesting. That time it got rejected, but from what I remember, it's very similar to what Blender now is.
Wow.
And yeah, I do agree with you. It's very interesting to see people so devoted to actually willing to spend time re reinventing things.
Hmm. So you mentioned that you know every button in Blender, which is quite the brag in our communities. So I, for one, am extremely impressed. On that note, do you find that it's helpful to actually know all the buttons in Blender? And do you find that you
Mm.
use most of the features? Where Blender is such a robust creation suite, there's so many things you can do from 3D modeling, animating, rigging, compositing, uh, video tracking, you name it. Where do you find yourself drawn to in Blender?
Well, as you said, Blender is a extremely vast program. It could easily be three different programs merged together, and yeah, there are of course specific features that I barely touch. Some features I never even touched all my life. Like for example, I did very little texture painting because I never needed it.
Hmm.
Strictly on Blender. I don't. I usually try to avoid rigging because for our listening, rigging is hell. From the rest, from 3D modeling and shader, video tracking, compositing, that stuff I use very often. I, I wish I would had the chance to do more actually camera tracking and video tracking, but for now, yeah, I mostly do modeling and shading and geometry nodes editing, and of course rendering.
Can you tell us a little bit about the projects you're working on right now that you're most excited about?
Yeah, there are two main projects I've been working on for one for a month and the other one for almost five. And the other one, the first one is the next generator, procedural generator that I wish I'll release later this autumn, which is it's called for now Castle Generator and does basically what the name suggests. Is it's a system that from nothing creates a castle with a system of houses and walls and towers and bridges and everything you name it. I'm slowly adding and adding stuff, and it already became the largest project I ever did this way.
Congrats.
And this, I hope I see the end
Don't we all?
because yeah. And the other project is something I barely even shared online yet, and it's called for now it's called Glitch Tools, and it's a modular system designed for shading for shader in Blender that lets you glitch images and shaders both in coordinates. So you're literally displacing things in a glitchy way, and there are several nodes that lets you do color correction and color glitching, and that is probably, yeah, it's the second biggest thing I ever did. Yeah, I'm very proud for where it's where it went for now. I hope to implement it more before releasing it,
Mhm.
but it's almost that is almost ready.
Are you creating these generators for other projects, larger projects? Are you making them for your work, or is it purely for fun? Okay.
It is for fun. Yeah, I'm actually creating generators and products because I'm on a little creative block for myself.
Hmm.
So while I don't know what huge project take for myself, create what creative project, I obviously I don't want to stay still for months, and that was also an amazing excuse to learn new tools like geometry nodes.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about geometry nodes, when you started, and what resources you found most helpful in learning.
Yeah, well, I started probably immediately after the. I don't know. I don't remember which version was, but the first version, including it, came out, and it was pure wizardry. Like, what is this? Because I never touched Houdini or other procedural programs, so for me it was absolutely new. I tried following a couple tutorials, and learning was hard because the first version of geometry nodes was a bit, in my opinion, no, I don't want to say bad, but it was unpractical because you had to type and write all the names and the attributes of things. It wasn't automated, so it was slow. It required a lot of thinking, and I never got to be anywhere with that. But actually, I did follow it, and I still do follow the Arindel tutorials. I think their tutorials were the most useful ones, the one where I learned basically everything I know and do now.
Amazing. Shout out to Arendelle. Probably every episode of this podcast will have a shout out to Arendelle. A great human, great teacher. What programs do you use besides Blender, if you do use programs besides Blender? And when did you start using them? And then, in that same vein, do you feel like your art has evolved over time?
Okay, that's a very big question that I really appreciate. Um, Other than Blender, I mean, in for doing 3D art, I only use Blender because I'm mostly familiar with it, and I never really needed anything else. Like I tried ZBrush years ago, but sculpting is not my thing, not even in real life, so I abandoned it probably 2 hours later. I tried Maya, but I ran away screaming. And no, for 3D I use only Blender. I 2 months ago I stopped using After Effects and Premiere, and I started using DaVinci Resolve. And it's probably, and I'm extremely happy with my decision. It's an amazing program, an amazing product,
Mm-hmm.
super powerful. And then I use, well, of course, like probably anyone, I use Photoshop. Although for probably 10 years I tried to force myself to start using GIMP more than Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something you get too much used to do that you don't even think of it. You just open Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
And for drawing, I use Clip Studio Paint or Krita, depends on which computer I am.
Cool.
And they both amazing. And Krita, in my opinion, is more focused on mimic painting, and Clip Studio is an amazing line art program. I think that's it. From graphic wise, that's it.
Are you a working artist?
I do gigs when I can. I worked for a year for a company that did video visualization for medical companies and hospitals. I study at the Fine Art Academy,
Yeah.
and I still have exams to do and take my degree years later, but I'm still there, and I will eventually.
I believe in you. You're very multi-talented.
Thank you.
Okay, so Blender, Krita, Photoshop, GIMP, Clip Studio, lots
Yeah,
of awesome softwares to check out. I haven't checked out all of those, so um, I'm looking forward to researching those. I also recently transitioned from After Effects to DaVinci, and it's been amazing. I love DaVinci. It's a lot more intuitive, a lot more clean. There's the
it's
whole
extremely powerful.
node system, powerful. Yeah. So shout out to DaVinci.
Yeah, you mentioned an important thing. It has nodes.
Yeah.
That means it's a non-linear program. And the thing I hate the most of Photoshop is the layer system. Because when you get used to working with nodes, layer systems are antiquity,
Mm.
are so much behind. It's
It
it's a pain.
it does seem like the gateway drug into more complex system building. Right. So Unity uses nodes, Unreal uses nodes. I don't know if you've ever heard of Scratch, but it's a program that teaches kids how to code, and it's basically a node system. I can understand what you mean when you say that the layer system is antiquated. Though I have to say, as a person who was really slow to enter the realm of digital art, learning first how like a non-destructive workflow in a layer system works was very helpful for me. I started off with Procreate, which you may be familiar with,
Yeah, I
and
use it.
oh, awesome, yeah, with Procreate, and then I transitioned into Photoshop, and there was like a pretty steep learning curve for me for both of those, and then I was in a place where I could jump into Blender, and even in Blender, only since I've started really using the modifiers and like the array modifier in particular, like a lot, and wishing I didn't have to apply the modifier to build. I'm like, oh, this is so frustrating. What is the
Yeah.
answer? And the answer is geometry nodes. So,
Ah,
everybody,
yeah.
everybody.
Ah.
Yeah. So I wanted also to ask you what your daily schedule is like, and then after that, what inspires you to create.
Okay, I don't really have a daily schedule because I have to admit I'm very lazy and I have pretty severe insomnia. So sooner or later I go to bed and eventually I'll wake up.
Mhm.
And usually my day it's I wake up, I drink possibly 10 or 15 liters of coffee, then I sit on my desk, I turn on my computer and I start working. Then I have lunch, then I work, then I have dinner, then I work or go out. I usually go out with my girlfriend to meet friends, have a beer, or my possibly see some live music, just have a nice time and try with all my might to not think about Blender when I'm out and what I'm doing. It's always a pain when maybe like I have to cut short the work and go out, but I had an issue that I wasn't able to solve. I will probably spend the rest of my day thinking of that issue and not really enjoying when I'm out because I'm like,
Hmm. Yeah, that's
but
good advice to all the blender heads out there, especially the young ones who do this all day, every day instead of school. Um,
yeah, don't obsess.
don't
Don't
obsess.
obsess.
Hmm. So you
Your file is not going anywhere.
True. And Blender's only going to get better and more helpful in solving your problems, hopefully. You inspired me to drink water after saying you drink 10 to 15 liters of coffee.
Let's drink water.
Yeah, cheers. Hydration station, ideation station. Okay, so you don't have a daily schedule, which is totally cool. I feel like daily schedules are a little bit overhyped in the whole like Tim Ferriss hyper productivity era. What kind of music do you listen to, and do you consider yourself a musician? I've noticed that you share a lot of music.
I listen to probably everything. In mean that I love classical music. I listen to a lot of classical music, but while not knowing as much as classical music, for example, I listen also to black metal. So I listen to the whole spectrum. I listen to a lot of electronic music, from dance to techno, ambient. My favorite genre are probably dream pop, shoegaze, ambient, probably yeah, post rock. Post rock has been with me since I was a kid.
Have you discovered
And
any musicians lately that you're really excited about?
lately, I wouldn't say so because, and I feel bad saying it, but in the last year, I got very lazy in my music research because I just have other thoughts. So I just open Spotify or YouTube. I know what to look for. I press play and I let it go.
The
So
algorithm.
no. I mean, I never use the algorithm because I don't really like what it suggests usually. So I just have my library
Ah,
and I know what to play from the library basing on how I feel.
I feel like I'm in a rut that way too. I haven't discovered many new artists, and I've been just re-listening to stuff. Like I have music I listen to, like Bonobo is a DJ that I listen to a lot, and I listen to him when I work. And then when I go on runs, I listen to John Mayer. And then when I want to be in my feelings, I listen to Kimbra. So I'm kind of at that stage, like mid 20s, where I'm very comfortable in what I want to feel at a specific moment and how to trigger that.
Yeah, I try to not consider music as something to collect in order to brag about how big your collection is, but is as a safe space. And the more uh, different kind of music, different authors you know, the more wider your safe space gets, and the more is able to adapt to your mood and help your mood or improve your mood. I think that's important. I think honestly, I think music is probably is with art itself, and 3D art is probably the most important thing in my life. I If I probably could choose between losing sight and hearing, I would probably be very um, motivated to choose to lose sight. I couldn't live without music.
I feel the same. That's a hard decision, though.
Yeah, it's a thought experiment and it's extremely hard.
I've been experimenting with this lately. So I feel like when people listen to music, it's very, very pleasurable, and a good number of people are able to experience that pleasure deeply. And you see this when you go to a concert or a show, and people are shoulder to shoulder, really experiencing the music on a deep level, like a euphoric kind of level. However, you go to a gallery or a museum, and the energy is not the same. You don't stand
Absolutely.
next to somebody in a museum or a gallery and like euphorically experience this piece. And I don't know if that's because it's just visual art is experienced by humans just in a fundamentally different way, or if there's a lack of cultivation of like inner pleasure when we look at something beautiful. Like, I don't make an
Mm,
effort to really look at something beautiful after my brain has been like, I like that, that's beautiful. Whereas with a song, I hear it, I'm like, I like that, that's beautiful. And then it keeps going, and then I realize how much deeper I can go. And perhaps I could do that also with visual art, but I have to intentionally cultivate that within myself.
I think that there are two main differences. I do agree with what you say, and I think there are two main differences from, for example, a gallery and a live music concert. The first is that in a gallery there is sort of an etiquette of how to behave that is extremely different to how to behave in a concert
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason they decided it. And the other is that probably the way your brain reacts to any kind of static art is different from evolving art. Like, music is an evolving art because, like, you take whatever song, it lasts 3 minutes, 15 minutes. It takes you from a point, and it goes with you for another point, and it evolves, and you go along with it. So, music mm, react and generates, in my opinion, reactions closer to maybe a very evocative movie, but not a painting. Mostly because a painting, while being so beautiful to let you shed tears, it's static,
Mm.
and it will not, like, you can see this epic scene of a knight saving a maid with a battle and a thunderstorm, and it's so epic you're crying, but you will never see that action resolving.
Mm.
It's a frame freezed in time.
That's a really amazing way of putting it and thinking about it.
I did cry in a museum too, so once, only once.
Tell us what painting you cried at.
It was in Vienna, and when I saw, it was one of the most famous painting by Klimt. Ah, yes, of course, it was the most famous one, the Kiss from
Oh
Klimt.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and you will be surprised. It's actually like 3 meters by two. It's
Oh,
huge. Yeah, it's huge.
that's big.
I remained like 15 minutes mm, still looking at it with tears down my eyes. I was so blown away by the sheer beauty. That was a nice moment.
Wow. I hope to have that experience with the painting. Truly.
Ah, you will. Sooner or later, you will.
There's a really amazing Klimt inspired model on Sketchfab. It's very popular, and I saw it when I joined Sketchfab for the first time, and it really inspired me to make more art, particularly art inspired by art that already exists in the world. What inspires you to create?
I think that one of the major things that drives my creativity, and that is also one of the reasons why I do a lot of generative stuff, is that I really love the idea that other people use it. The idea to create something that someone else can take and shape in its own way with its own workflow. It's something that I really like. I do also create things because I want to try, when I'm not doing generators, but try to do more art stuff. I really want to try to evoke something, to convey a feeling or an idea or concept. And I work a lot with composition and light, because trying to evoke, and this is probably like is heavily driven by having classical art formation. When you study like basic paint theory of to make portraits or any kind of paintings, one of the most important lessons you receive when you're doing classical academic art, not experimenting, I mean, it's to find a subject and an idea that you want to convey with your work, with your project on your work, and try to learn how to do it without being literate, explicit, let's say explicit. Sorry for my English, by the way.
No, it's totally wonderful.
Thanks. And one of the most hard things that you learn as a art student, that I learned myself, is how to develop your language. That is basically, it becomes the tool that you have at your disposal to convert your ideas into images without them being explicit. That is probably one of the most powerful tools an artist have, and
Mhm.
it is also, together with developing your own art style, the two most hard thing to develop. It can take you all your life to do it because it's never ending. It's always shape changing.
Yeah. Like, it's a trope that people go into museums and they look at a Van Gogh or like a Monet or a Manet and they say, uh, I could do that. Or they look at like Marcel Duchamp or like Andy Warhol and they go, I could put a toilet in a museum or I could do this pop art thing. And the truth is, these artists are actually very accomplished at making explicit art that most people can't do, like accomplished line drawers, like realistic portraits and stuff. And then when I learned that for the first time, it forced me to reevaluate what literally what art means and what it means to arrive at a style that, to use your phrase, is not explicit. It's like wholly subjective and like weird, and sharing that subjectivity and weirdness with the world is what's interesting to people.
I completely agree. And the names like that you use an example, the artist you took as example, are very huge example of the fact that art is before becoming a physical thing, it's an idea. The more you go back in time, the more art was created by getting an idea and developing a product that was 100% representative of that idea. And the more you go from now, it's reversing. So like mm, art is less of a finished and polished product, but it's the idea itself. To show the idea itself
Hmm.
by any means, and if that means to attach a toilet to a roof, it's okay. Everyone can do it, yes, but what makes it art? It's the research that you do to arrive to concept that action.
Word, 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 word. I think this is so relevant in the context of machine learning models and AI, generally speaking. But at least in our communities, everyone is sharing Mid-Journey renders and Dolly 2 renders. And what's the name of the new,
Stable diffusion.
yeah, Stable Diffusion renders? It's populating the whole Instagram feed and all of Twitter. And there's people who love it, there's people who hate it, but it begs the question, what what is art? What's the difference between art and content? And I think to your point that art is about the process. It's got to be, because these renders are more beautiful objectively, like socially, stylistically, objectively more beautiful than a lot of art that people make. And if that's the case, then the art isn't about like the objective beauty, if you want to call it that, but it's about the work that the artist put in to making the thing.
Yeah, the journey of the artist.
Yeah. Ian Hubert actually, let me pull this up.
My hero.
Yeah. Shout out. Ian, do you want to come on the podcast?
Yeah, Ian.
Yeah, this is what he said. He says, I know AI functions the same way. The example he just gave was using basically like an asset kit, and he kit bashed a bunch of spaceships together for one of his scenes. And he said he was delighted at the result, even though he used a kit bash, because the kit bash helped him actualize, like genuinely actualize a scene in the way that he wanted it. And this is what he says. And I know AI functions the same way. Just tired of the Instagram microcosm showing unending AI images because cool image equals likes, and likes are a social media currency. But if there isn't passion and effort in there somewhere, it's just content. And we have a lot of that already.
I do agree. I do agree. I see all the how useful the AI image generation can be, and I can see how many people it's going to help. Personally, I do not know if I will ever have very use of it, but I have personally nothing against it. As I mentioned in a conversation a couple days ago, I am not part of the group of people worried about losing their job, but I am very interested to see how will things develop, because how fast they're moving, you can really know what's happening tomorrow. So for now, I'm holding back and being curious.
Mm-hmm. That's a good place to be. There's some people who really believe that AI will push out most of the workforce very soon. And there'll be such a thing as artificial intelligence. There was a AI that could build a website for you based on your text inputs that was very popular 2 years ago. And it turned out this year it was discovered that the AI was just like underpaid workers. I'm laughing because it's so messed up.
Yeah,
Underpaid workers in like India. It's like artificial intelligence. And that you know that begs the question, okay, so AI is taking over these industries, but it's expensive to run machine learning models with giant databases. So
yeah.
there's going to be people who need money and companies that can't afford the AI, and then we're forcing humans to do the AI work when AI is meant to be is supposed to make human lives better. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know either. I read of a interesting point of the fact that probably the ability to obtain image generation so easily will actually um, increase the perceived value of real human work on that kind of jobs. So, like for example, the most probably touched example, the concept artist. Like you can have an AI generate concepts in a second, or you can pay a professional that will do it with a research and everything, and the result will be different, will be slower, of course, will not be 200 images in a month, but maybe 3. But the quality and the fidelity behind will be completely different.
Hmm.
And you will have to perceive it as a more valuable asset because it takes more time. So you as a customer will have the living proof behind in front of your eyes that it's more valuable because it takes more time.
Yeah, true. True,
At
true.
least I hope so.
Someone retweeted to replace CG artists with robots, clients will have to accurately describe what they want. We're,
Yeah,
we're safe.
yeah. We're safe. It's not going to happen.
So I want to start wrapping up these little podcasts with a rapid fire questions. We do this over at the Blenderness channel, and it's kind of fun. So, if you could be any character, what character would you be?
Games, books, whatever.
Whatever. You can even pick 3 from each medium if you can't decide.
Okay, game. No, wait, game. No. Animation. I want to be Oswald, the bunny that existed before Mickey Mouse.
Okay,
I always loved him.
cool.
He's, I want to be Oswald. Movie. Oof. Next question. I will think of it in the meantime.
Animation movie, what about game?
Oof. I play tons and tons of games, so I will probably say that I want to be Wanderer from Shadow of the Colossus,
Shadow of the
which is the
Colossus.
main which is the main character.
I don't know. I feel like it'd be funny to want to be a side character. It would probably be really relaxing, like an NPC, you know?
Yeah, I want to be the guy that sells fish near the shore there
Heck yeah.
every day, like this, with your pipe, just chilling, vibing.
Yeah, that's a good life.
Yeah,
What are 3 favorite items in your room that are inexpensive?
I wanted to say my cat, but my cat is very expensive because it's always sick. The bills are crazy. Probably my shoes because I got them used,
Nice, nice,
but
nice.
like the new used stuff. They are the short Dr. Martens shoes,
Oh, grunge.
and probably this
Yeah, that's
because
cute.
it only costed me €5,
Yeah.
so I love it for that reason. And 1 second. Mm, oh yes, probably this. It's a usable pen brush, so it's a pen and a brush, and it's always like $1.50, €1.50, because it's not rechargeable, and I love it.
Nice. I wish pens were that cheap over here. It's like pens are expensive in the States. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Dang. Can I pick 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the first one is Beethoven,
Okay.
because I just want to say to him how fucking how hardcore it is, and I love him. The other one is probably Igmar Bergman, the movie maker from the 60s to 80s. He is one of the cornerstone of movie history, one of the most important movie makers ever to ever existed, and it's probably my favorite ever. So I want to thank him for all the inspiration.
Wow. Where would you eat?
I'm not a fancy guy. Let's have a beer together.
So that was such a beautiful chat. That really got me thinking deeply about art and art making and the importance of process. In the vein of wrapping up, could you tell our listeners where they can follow you and where they can find your generators?
Yeah, so my generators are online on my Gumroad page that has my nickname, Barella. And most of my work in progress stuff I post on Twitter, and the nickname is Melt Brains because I was a teenager when I made it. My finished works, both 2D and 3D, are on my Instagram, which is always Barella. And that's it for the rest. For any questions, find me on Discord. with the same nickname.
Easy peasy, y'all. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an honor to have you as our second guest ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. It was absolutely a pleasure.
Talk soon.